everybody. Welcome to Up the First. It's August 23rd. I'm Ryan Ballangy. Thanks for being here. We've got quite a few things to talk about. I didn't really expect to have a whole lot to talk about this morning getting up. I mean, we could talk about the AIG Women's Open. We'll touch on that. Talk about the BMW Championship. We'll touch on that. But a couple of things happened this morning that are of at least some worthwhile discussion interest to me. So we're going to talk about them here in today's show. If you want to get a hold of me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com, Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Ryan Ballangy, Facebook, YouTube, Ryan Ballangy Golf, and then Golf News Net's a handle on all of those services. Happy to take your comments during the live stream or after the fact. Just get in there in the comments. Happy to talk about what you have to say about what we're talking about, or if you got something else on your mind, happy to talk about that as well. So, wanted to start with the news out of Louisville, Kentucky. And this came from the folks at WAVE TV. I don't know anyone at WAVE TV, just want to attribute it properly. And what has happened this morning is that one of the officers involved in the arrest of Scottie Scheffler in May at the PGA Championship, he himself has been arrested. And this is a pretty fascinating story to me for several different reasons. But here's the skinny. So the officer's name is Javar Downs. He was one of several, I think 3, officers who failed to turn on their body cam in the arrest of Scottie Scheffler on that early Friday morning outside Valhalla at the PGA Championship, when police were on the scene to investigate a fatal accident that involved a tournament worker who was struck by a transportation bus. And then Scheffler, somewhat unaware of the situation and misunderstanding the directions he was given from officers, tried to kind of go around the scene and traffic, which, on a 2-lane road made it very difficult to get by, trying to go into the club. Ultimately, Brian Gillis was the detective who was the guy who tracked down Scheffler and had his $80 pants ruined, and that ultimately arrested Scheffler. But Officer Downs was one of those involved in the interactions with Scheffler throughout this entire process and apparently failed to turn on his body cam. Well, Downs was arrested on suspicion of seizing $4,000 from someone he had arrested and booked into Louisville Metro Police Department jail. So he is charged with a single count of theft by unlawful taking of $1,000 or greater, and a single count of official misconduct in Jefferson County. So the LMPD put out this statement. It says, yesterday, LMPD received a complaint from a citizen alleging theft by an officer. That complainant was arrested on August 21st, 2024 by Officer Javar Downs, who is assigned to LMPD's traffic unit. Their public integrity unit immediately opened an investigation early this morning, arrested Officer Javar Downs, charging him with those 2 charges we talked about. The investigation is ongoing, and as such, LMPD is not at liberty to provide additional comment at this time. Chief Humphrey has placed Officer Downs on emergency suspension, limited his police powers, and has begun the process of terminating the employment of Officer Downs from the Louisville Metro Police Department. Allegations of officer malfeasance are taken very seriously. LMPD prioritizes accountability and remains committed to conducting thorough and expedient investigations in the best interests of all parties involved. End quote. So really an unfortunate situation, but when all of this kind of happened back in May, right, there was kind of a wide spectrum of reaction, I think, initially, of what did Scheffler do to piss off these officers. That was kind of one wing of it. The other was maybe they're just not telling us everything. And then ultimately, I think a lot more people moved toward maybe they're not telling us everything, especially as the investigation after the fact continued, after the story from Officer Gillis, his accounting of things came out, and then married it with the video. And you kind of go, okay, well, what were we doing here in the first place? What happened here? And then you see in the additional investigation, hey, several officers didn't have their body cams turned on. They're required to have it on. They have the city council meeting where the city council members are talking to the police, Chief Humphreys and several other officers. Like, if you guys don't turn these things on, how can we justify to the people of this county and this city that you're going to use them for good and that we should spend money on them, much less any other piece of equipment? If you're not going to use it right, why should we give it to you? And that caused a whole lot of problems. Obviously, the Jefferson County prosecutor's office tried as long as they could to kind of make this annoying for Scheffler. They wanted to paint him as someone who wasn't above the law, even though they did paint him as someone kind of above the law, kind of unintentionally. Ultimately, all of the charges obviously were dropped, and the pretty much prosecutor's office said, "Hey, we kind of messed up on our end, or officers messed up on our end. We don't really have enough to charge you here with anything. This seems like a genuine misunderstanding. Thank you and goodbye." And then now you get this, and Kevin Van Valkenburg from No Laying Up, a buddy of mine whose opinion I respect on a lot of things, kind of talked about, hey, well, this is a reason why people are skeptical of police, because you turn around and you find out, hey, this guy took $4,000 off of a suspect, and now he's in jail, being the guy arrested for theft. And it reminded me of We Own This City, which is I think it was an HBO series about police misconduct in Baltimore City. I'm from the Baltimore area. I grew up closer to Baltimore. I live closer to DC now. But police misconduct in Baltimore, trying to basically take down drug gangs and gun criminals in the early 2000s, around the time when a guy named Martin O'Malley was the mayor of the city. And they saw this precipitous drop in crime. You go, what are they doing? How did it happen? What a turnaround. And as it turns out, a lot of the stuff that this kind of very special unit was doing was well outside what officers could do in the law. And they were taking money and pocketing for themselves and paying each other in the unit, and eventually kind of fell apart. I'm not saying it's that broad of a scheme at the LMPD, but it's those kinds of situations where you go, all right, well, there are lots of great people in police departments who are upholding the law and defending people and trying to keep us safe. And they do an incredible job, and they put themselves at risk every day. And their great work gets tarnished by people who do something like this, which is take money off of a suspect with every intention of probably just pocketing it for themselves. And that was something that came up a lot in We Own the City of, oh, well, we found $25,000. We'll just write $5,000. We'll distribute $20,000 otherwise. And that's really unfortunate. Now, nothing's happened to Brian Gillis. He continues to do his job, but Javar Downs is no longer going to be a Louisville Metro Police Department officer. Now, the question is, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12, 18 months from now, is there going to be somebody a police department who hires Javar Downs, and they have to deal with that in their community? I don't know. That can happen, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So I thought that was an interesting story, given everything that happened with the whole Scheffler incident in May. It's not a kind of, oh, well, this vindicates Scheffler or anything like that. Just that's something I wanted to talk about, I think, for a few minutes here. So there's that to start everything. Then the other piece of news that happened this morning that I thought was very surprising to me and to a lot of people is that Hideki Matsuyama withdrew from the BMW Championship. Shot an opening round 5 under 67, was one shot off the lead of Keegan Bradley. Found himself in a good position to maybe go back-to-back in the playoffs. Set himself up to maybe be, I think you at best be number 2 in the ranking going into the Tour Championship. I don't think he could pass Hideki, if I remember right, or Scottie Scheffler, if I remember right. However, he's out of the tournament now. So he had a lower back issue. The quote that was attributed to him from the PGA Tour release announcing this from their communications Twitter account was, "I am disappointed to have to withdraw from the BMW Championship after experiencing lower back discomfort while warming up this morning, which made it impossible to play. Thank you to BMW and the Western Golf Association for a great experience here at Castle Pines." End quote. It's been a couple weird weeks for Hideki Matsuyama, right? Wins the bronze medal in Paris and tries to go home. He's trying to get back to the States. He's not trying to go back home to Japan. He's trying to get back to the States, get ready for the playoffs. It sounded like it was in Heathrow Airport, but in a London airport. I don't think he would have flown out of Gatwick. But out of a London airport, he's robbed. His caddy is robbed. His coach is robbed. His caddy and coach are robbed of their transportation documents, their visa and passport. So they have no choice but to go back to Japan to go get reissues of those documents so they can come back to the United States for the playoffs. They definitely weren't going to make Memphis. There was a pretty good chance, if not 100% chance, they were going to miss this event, the BMW. And at best, they'd be back for the Tour Championship because Hideki was almost certainly going to get, I think he was guaranteed to get there at that point. But then Hideki goes to Memphis and wins the golf tournament, picks up a second win of the year, gets 3.6 million bucks, puts himself into third position in the playoff standings. He sets himself up to be 3 strokes off of Scheffler's lead when they start at East Lake next week. And now that's a little bit in flux. It doesn't sound like what happened here is such a concerning issue that he can't play next week in Atlanta for a 100 million, what is effectively a $100 million purse, 25 million to the winner. I don't think that's what's going to happen here. However, it's at least scary enough for him to withdraw out of this tournament, probably knowing that he could make it worse. And you don't want to do that going into a tournament that's worth way more money. And that's weird to say, than $20 million as a purse and 3.6 million to the winner. So Hideki's out. And that's unfortunate for him, but maybe it kind of works out for him. And the reason I say that is, as we're doing this at 1:30 in the afternoon, Adam Scott leads the BMW Championship by 5 shots over Alex Noren. He's 13 under total, 9 under on the day, getting ready to play. He's playing 18 at the moment. So all of a sudden, Adam Scott, who started the week at 41st in the FedEx Cup points list, he is projected with a win to go to 4th. So he wouldn't get past Hideki. Hideki would still be 3rd, but you could have this turnaround here. So if Alex Noren winds up coming in and winning, he started 45th. He couldn't pass Hideki. But Corey Connors, who is tied for 3rd right now, albeit 7 shots back of the current leader, Adam Scott, he could move from 33rd, probably closer to 4th or 3rd. Siwoo Kim is out there, and Keegan Bradley, they are both in the 40s as well. Bradley's 50 on the number. So those guys wouldn't pass Hideki. So it's not that he sat there and got out the whiteboard and did the math like, hey, here we go. I need to do this, or this needs to happen, so I'm not 3rd. He probably knew he couldn't get past. And if Scheffler or Schauffele won, then okay, so be it. That's fine. They're already 1st or 2nd. They already have the advantage. Them winning doesn't mean anything because the position is translated to strokes, not the edge over a certain player. So Hideki's almost certainly going to be 3rd in the standings, and he'll start on 7 under total. And then that will lead to him being 3 off the lead going into the Tour Championship start next week at East Lake. So unfortunate for Hideki, especially for me, because I had him in one and done. And after the first round, I thought, hey, we're on like the 5th week in a row of really good picks. And that is the 2nd time, I believe, in 3 or 4 years that Hideki Matsuyama, specifically, when I have picked him, has withdrawn from a tournament after a great first round. So not great. And also for Rob Bolton, who's a longtime fantasy writer, a guy who I owe a lot of my career to, writing professionally about golf. He had Hideki Matsuyama in a one-and-done contest we're in, and he had a chance to win the one-and-done league, which ends after this week because you can't pick somebody for the net tournament. That stinks for Rob. I mean, he's just a brilliant fantasy mind, and unfortunately, he's going to get screwed over here. And I mean, that happens, but stinks for him. So there's that. And then the third thing I want to talk about, I know this is a show called Two at the First. We're supposed to talk about 2 things, but talking about someone getting arrested outside of golf doesn't warrant being a full topic. So the AIG Women's Open is at the Old Course this week. They are, I believe, if not completely done the second round. There some players out there on 15 and 16. But we've got ourselves a hell of a leaderboard going into the weekend of this tournament, the final major of the year on the LPGA Tour. Nelly Korda shot her 2nd consecutive 68 this morning. She's at 8 under total. She leads by 3 strokes over Lilia Vu, who has won this event, won it last year, is the defending champion. She shot 70 today, so she's at 5 under total, along with Charlie Hall, who opened with 67, struggled a little bit more today, was over par for a lot of the round, wound up getting into the house at even par 72. So she's at 5 under. Ronin Yin, who's a major champion, she's 4 under par. She's in the mix. I mean, they put Vu, Korda, and Hall together for the first 2 rounds, and they are 1, T2, and T2 heading into the weekend. You could not have made a better pairing if you had asked for it in terms of trying to get all the attention on this tournament. You got to see them for the first 2 rounds. You're going to see them playing close to one another heading into the weekend, probably throughout the entire weekend. Really, really cool. Ashley Buhai, who won this tournament a few years ago, is her first LPGA win. She is in the mix. She's a 3 under total, 5 back of the lead. Cassandra Alexander, who's a fellow South African player, well, I don't really know a whole lot about, but she plays in the LET, Ladies European Tour. She's a 3 under total. Lydia Ko's in there at 3 under total. Mao Saigo, who's a good player, is in there at 3 under total. Like, you've got a really strong leaderboard heading into the weekend. That Patty Tavatanik gets in there 2 under. Jie Shin, former world number 1's in there 2 under. A lot of players. Lottie Woe, the Augusta National Women's Amateur Champion, is in the mix through 17 holes. She's 2 under total. So a really, really good leaderboard heading into the weekend. It was interesting to hear from Martin Slumbers, who's now the outgoing chief executive of the RNA, about to be replaced in short time, I think by the end of the year, with a new chief executive guy who's kind of like in his 40s and younger. But the perspective of the RNA about this tournament has changed so much in 10 years. I mean, just a staggering difference, where when the RNA took over this tournament from the Ladies Golf Union, this is kind of political stuff, but the Ladies Golf Union, which is connected but not directly connected to the RNA, used to run the Women's Open. And they had a hard time really doing a lot of the things that the RNA does well, which is attract big host venues, attract a great sponsor, elevate the event, do PR, increase purses, all those types of things. They struggle with that, and they recognize that. Like, hey, let's get this in the RNA's hands. Let's get them onto the open rotation courses. Let's do some things here. And in the kind of 10 years, it's now 11 years since the last time the old course hosted this AIG Women's Open, the tournament has changed dramatically. The purse is now $9.5 million. It was $9 million last year. AIG has done a great job coming in and saying, we want to invest in this event. We want you to invest in this event. We want to increase purses every single year. We want to make sure that there's better coverage of it. We want to be on the best courses. We want to be on the open rotation courses. And the RNA has responded in kind, which has been great. They have basically said, moving forward, we want the Women's Open to be played on the same rota of courses as the Open. And as Beth Ann Nichols from Golf Week has talked about so many times, venues matter. Venues really matter to women's golf. Having the best places, having fun places to watch that are eye-catching to a casual player or golfer, golf fan that may not know the LPGA players yet, but they know the venue and they want to watch the venue. If that's the hook, if that's what gets them in the door, and then they see how incredible these players are, maybe they become fans. Maybe they watch again. Maybe they get involved. Maybe they attend an event. So a venue can be a huge hook. And if you tell the AIG Women's Open audience, hey, we're going to go play Muirfield. We're going to be at the old course every 7 to 10 years. We're going to go to all of those rotation courses that you know about. That is an indication that this tournament matters to them. And so it should matter to you. Venue choice really does go a long way in doing that. USGA has done a great job with that in bringing along the Women's Open to more famed venues as well, while still maintaining some of the character of, hey, these are longtime hosts of the Women's Open. They're great venues. We want to come back to some of these, like Lancaster Country Club, Pine Needles. They're going to go to Erin Hills next year. Okay, well, I had a U.S. Open. Maybe that can have a legacy as a U.S. Women's Open host as well. The two major governing bodies of the game have done a good job of doing that with their Women's Open, whether it's the Women's U.S. Open, whether that's the Women's Open. And that has been meaningful. The one thing I think is interesting, as Slumbers said, there is one difference. They want to have, at least in the rotation for the Women's Open, a tournament in the London area. And the reason they want to do that is because they're using this Women's Open platform as a way to invite women and juniors and people who have historically not been involved with the game of golf into the game. And they're trying to use that as a way to get people who are in London to come out, experience golf, maybe put a club in their hand and get involved in the game. And I think I feel conflicted about that, because seeing women's golf in a degree is just a way to build up golf. That seems like it's reducing the value of the championship itself to a small degree. But at the same time, women and kids are the biggest growing groups of people who are playing golf in the last 5 years. And if we can welcome more kids to the game at an early age, if we can welcome more women into the game, that's a great opportunity for the sport. So maybe it is a good jumping off point, particularly over in England and Scotland, where they've made such a big push to try to get more people in golf adjacent ways, whatever that is. So that's great. We've got a great tournament heading into the weekend there. That's awesome. We do have some other stuff. One other thing I want to point out before we get out of here, and I know this is like a fourth story, so apologies, but apparently the Greenbrier is not going to be auctioned off next week after all. So I read this late last night after I was getting ready to go to bed. As I was getting ready to go to bed, the Greenbrier has, or at least Jim Justice's family. Jim Justice is the owner of the Greenbrier through his companies. He is also the governor of West Virginia. He is about to become term limited, not be the governor, but be the U.S. senator from West Virginia, unless somehow Joe Manchin pulls out a miracle. But the most likely outcome is Jim Justice is going to be the Republican senator from the state of West Virginia. Well, that resort that he owns, one of the biggest loan on it was sold from JP Morgan Chase to a creditor who then put it into default, said, hey, you owe us 40 some odd $1 million, whatever it was. If you don't pay it, we're going to auction this thing off. Here's the date. Apparently something has worked out. Now they have until October the 24th, I believe, to pay whatever the back amount is, some millions of dollars. And there's some other stuff still going on, but at least it won't be auctioned off next week. So Jim Justice and his family get to own it for at least 2 months longer. We'll see what happens from there. But that is a live golf venue, and we'll see what happens with the 2025 schedule, whether that remains as part of the live golf calendar or what happens going forward there. But we'll have to see. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. Appreciate it, whether you're watching live stream, whether you're catching us after the fact on podcast platform or YouTube or whatever. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Again, email me, ryan@thegolfnewsnet.com. Follow me on social media at Ryan Ballingy or on Facebook and YouTube at Ryan Ballingy Golf. Golf Newsnet's a handle on every one of those services. We'll be back next week. We've got the Tour Championship. We've got some fallout from the AIG Women's Open. We've got the Korn Ferry Tour Finals. By the way, you should check out the latest episode of The Road to French Lick. Our 8th episode is out. Came out yesterday. Getting you ready for the FedEx Cup, the Korn Ferry Tour Finals. And that culminates in the Tour Championship presented by United Leasing and Finance. That'll be a French Lick on the Pete Dye course. We will be there doing live shows that week on GNN TV. So check that out as well when you have some time. Back again next week. Thanks so much for your support. We will catch you next time on 2 Off the First. Have a great week.